Killer clowns have long been a staple of pop culture. We've seen many iterations of this classic trope over the years, from Stephen King's child-eating Pennywise from It to the Terrifier franchises Art the Clown, David Howard Thornton, to Twisty the Clown, John Carroll Lynch from American Horror Story. That said, few killer clowns in all of fiction are as absurdly sadistic as Sweet Tooth, the machete-wielding, ice cream truck-driving mascot of the Twisted Metal video game franchise. The Twisted Metal series revolves around a yearly demolition derby named Twisted Metal, in which drivers use weapons and modified vehicles to destroy their opponents in the arena.
Where you going, Grim?
One car down and 5 to go.
Sweet Tooth, whose real name is Needles Kane, is one of those contestants, a deranged serial killer who glorifies the Twisted Metal tournament and revels in all of the death and destruction he can cause throughout the arena. Because Sweet Tooth is practically synonymous with the Twisted Metal, Sweet Tooth's design and personality have evolved over the years.
Beat go?
Dana, Dana.
Baby, let your booty go.
Dana, Dana.
Girl, you want to show?
Dana, Dana.
The thong, the thong, thong, thong. Do you love the silver-haired god? Huh? Don't lie to me.
Yeah, man. Look, I listened to Unleash the Dragon so many times the disc broke. I'm not a liar.
But you said you were coming to my show.
When we were first introduced to Sweet Tooth in the original Twisted Metal PlayStation game, he was actually much more reserved than in later installments of the franchise. In the first game, he appears in live action and is played by actor Robert Goodins, being distinguished by his clown mask and his shock of green hair. Twisted Metal 2 introduced Sweet Tooth's most familiar design elements, his white face paint and head covered with writhing flames instead of hair. In this game, he resents his murderous nature to the point where he actually wishes to become a bug in order to escape his madness. Twisted Metal 3 began his transition into a colorful mass murderer who relishes murder and extreme violence, something that became a staple of his character in later installments. The biggest shift in Sweet Tooth's design and character came in the PlayStation 2 reboot Twisted Metal Black, in which he is presented as a ruthless mass murderer whose bloodlust can never be sated. This darker, more serious version of Sweet Tooth is cursed to have his skull burn forever with the flames of hell, and wears his iconic smiling mask, a set of leather suspenders, and polka dot clown pants. This particular design managed to stick around after Black, being adapted with slight alterations for Twisted Metal 2012 and Twisted Metal Lost. In fact, Sweet Tooth's appearance in Lost appears to be the basis for his design in Peacock's new series, as both have nearly identical overalls and pants. What is Sweet Tooth's backstory? Despite being the most famous character in the Twisted Metal franchise, it's worth noting that Sweet Tooth's backstory seems to change dramatically from game to game. He is most often presented as a serial killer who used his ice cream truck, the same vehicle he operates in the Twisted Metal tournament, to drive around Midtown and murder indiscriminately. Outside of that, we're usually given only sparse bits of information about his past and about his motivation for joining the tournament itself. We're presented with a much more in-depth backstory for Sweet Tooth in the PlayStation 3 reboot Twisted Metal 2012, in which we learn that Sweet Tooth's true identity is that of Marcus Kane, a struggling father of 4 who drives an ice cream truck in order to support his family. Marcus is tormented by a split personality named Needles, who loathes his family and his boring lifestyle, and who eventually takes over as the dominant personality. Now in control, Needles puts on a homemade clown mask, fire inexplicably lighting his head as he does so, and massacres his family, all except for his daughter, Sophie, who stabs him with scissors and escapes his rampage. Sweet Tooth's ongoing hunt for his daughter becomes a central storyline in Twisted Metal 2012, and he actually joins the Twisted Metal tournament, hoping to use the prize, a wish of his choosing, to finally track her down. How will Sweet Tooth factor into the Peacock adaptation of Twisted Metal? It's currently unclear how much of Sweet Tooth's backstory from the video games will make it into Peacock's Twisted Metal series, particularly because the show itself seems to be deviating pretty heavily from its source material. the official description for Peacock's Twisted Metal bills the series as a fresh take on the franchise by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, one that is set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland and centers around a delivery driver named John Doe, Anthony Mackie. Instead of a demolition derby-style tournament, the series focuses on John Doe's white knuckle,